We call ourselves the Elite.
Better than you, and you know it.
If not us, who? And if not now, when?
We don't care about race or gender or sex or religion. If you're an elite athlete, we want you.
Change the world.
We are going to change the whole universe!
This is what you call a paradigm shift.
He saw what wrestling was and realized what it could be.
All Elite Wrestling!
For the 11th time, it's Monday morning, and you know what that means? It's time for the next chapter of the only professional wrestling podcast that is changing the world every week. This is Seeing the Elite, an AEW podcast. I am your host, Bryce Reed. I'm joined by my friend, my co-host, my tag team partner, Mr. Jonathan Davis.
How's it going, dude?
It is a victory lap week for AEW and a victory lap week for Seeing the Elite. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Jonathan and I are two friends, fans, lovers of professional wrestling who are here every single Monday morning with all the latest news from All Elite Wrestling. Before we go any further, JD and I have to recognize the massive influx of new listeners that we saw for last week's Chapter X Take the House. Such a staggering, humbling, astounding number of new listeners. JD and I were speechless.
Absolutely speechless. Over the week, we just kept texting each other. He's like, hey, did you check it? Because it's like bigger.
And to put this in context for people, I mean, there's no reason not to be transparent here. You can see the numbers right on our website. For years, Jonathan and I hosted Podcast Underground. We hosted this podcast. For years upon years, 120 people was like a great week for us. Oh, sweet. 120 people. That's nice. We are serving a very niche audience, a very niche show, and doing the best we can to produce an entertaining show about that show, but there were only so many people who were going to watch that show. I mean, look at the ratings for Lucha Underground. They were never great. And then on top of that, you had to be also into podcasts and pretty good at searching the internet to find us. So fast forward to this week, and when 120 would usually be a good week for us, this week we did 1,800, which is just unbelievable, and we cannot
fucking mind-blowing.
We cannot thank you enough for choosing to join us on this journey. We know that your time is valuable, and we thank you for sharing it with us. But since so many of you are new, I feel it's our place to quickly reaffirm a couple of things for all of you. First, this is not a sports entertainment show. It's an entertaining sports show supported by fans like you from all over the world. JD and I didn't start an AEW podcast as an excuse to talk about WWE. Like, I'm sure many of them are out there. I wouldn't know. I don't listen. When WWE's ripples affect AEW, we'll talk about it. Otherwise, we won't be rushing through this week's headlines so we can talk about Brock Lesnar's wacky new gimmick. And we're not going to waste your time with negativity about a show that we don't watch. You've got places to find that if you want it. This show is about AEW.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you might have the occasional rant because we're just so infuriated by what happened that we just can't help ourselves.
And of course, it's difficult to examine AEW in a vacuum without also examining the major competition. Whether or not certain people want to admit it or not, others have gone in the other direction. So...
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we are, and it's not just WWE that we would talk about. We've been looking at other, ROH and Impact that are, having some bad times right now.
The second thing I want to firm up for everyone, as shown by last week's mega length episode, we don't really have a timeout for this show. Mostly it's a pet peeve thing for me. I hate it. I hate it when a podcast host says, well, we never got to talk about Seth Rollins this week, but we're out of time, so don't forget to follow us on Twitter. It's not the radio. Nobody's waiting to come on next, and we promise that as long as we do this show, we'll be on the line until we've said everything that we need to say.
Yeah, the only caveat is we'll probably have to start sooner.
Oh man, last week was a marathon. With the support of fans just like you, this show is going to keep getting better and better every single week, and we're going to do our best to bring that to you. Thank you so much once again to everybody that's new to the show. Hope that you stay with us. Hope that you continue to love AEW the way that we've been loving AEW for the last 11 weeks now. YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and podcast services everywhere. Subscribe. I'll get it in editing. Review. Give us 5 stars just like Meltzer. It makes us feel so sweet. Jonathan, how sweet?
Too sweet, buddy.
Too sweet. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Seeing the Elite, and new for this week, although I just talked shit about it. We're on Twitter at Seeing the Elite. No G, SEEINTHEELITE.
Yeah, we weren't on top of the game to get the G.
Yeah, that one's long gone to somebody else. But Seeing the Elite, just pretend like you're from Georgia, like Jonathan. Yeah. But more important than any of that, go to our Discord, join our awesome community of fans from all over the world who are having a great time talking about. We talked about everything this week. There's a great, some great trash talk going on between the champ and the number one contender, and a myriad of topics talked about. We had a blast over there this week, and it's the best place to stay up to date on AEW. News comes through as soon as it hits the internet. And it's awesome, man. So go over there, check it out, tinyurl.com/Seeing the Elite. That's tinyurl.com/Seeing the Elite. As always, at least since last week, Jonathan's job is to take down the time codes, and he's going to be doing that.
Whoops.
So if you want to look at something specific, check the description for time codes. That's where Jonathan's going to be.
Yeah. So yeah, the funniest thing of last week during the Discord is, I was 100% joking with people of, hey, yeah, you guys should make some videos of your trash talking. We'll put them on the show. Within 10 minutes, we had actual recordings of people trash talking. I was like, oh, all right, guys, man. I was kidding.
I could have put him in the show, but I decided against it.
No, we'll save those until we get to Fyter Fest and give it a real good build up of like all the shit talking that's happened. Before we go any further, this fucking Vince Russo thing, okay, has me out of my goddamn mind. I didn't pull up the tweet. I didn't get the quote. I don't even fucking want to talk about it at length, but he's apparently in the interest of getting people to listen to his fucking podcast, which I'm sure is difficult. I saw the tweet and I was like, you know what? Even if it's for 2 seconds, we have to talk about this because this is goddamn amazing.
He's drummed up the wild conspiracy theory that AEW and WWE are working together.
There's also now a Twitter page of AEWWEWrestling.com.
Yes, which he's deeply involved in, right?
I thought it was just some fan just trolling his ass, but yeah, that makes sense.
His proof on the matter is the thing that happened with Cody at Double or Nothing, and then the thing that Sami Zayn said on Raw.
Which was 100% scripted.
Yeah, I don't know if that's... I wouldn't say that that's proof at all, but it's Vince Russo. So I think a lot like Cornette's comments this week, which I'm not even going to touch with a 10-foot pole.
I don't want to talk about that. That's...
he's just trying to. They're just trying to get attention. Nobody gives a fuck. I did find it funny that Cornette made such a big deal about a dinosaur wrestler when that's what he fucking is. That's his life. You know what I mean? So, but both of them.
The best part of all that, though, has been Luchasaurus's Twitter, where he's like, "Yeah, I have a master's degree in like history and stuff, and dinosaurs. We've been around and evolved all these times to be great. What's your excuse?"
One day, they will all come to my funeral just to make sure that I stay dead, but today is not that day. I'm alive. My heart is still beating, and I'm breathing fresh air for the first time in a long time. My name is Jon Moxley, and I am on a mission to reclaim my soul, and I know I'm not the only one who thinks, it's about time this industry got a facelift. So, make no mistake about it. This is an official declaration of war tonight to anyone who wants to get in my way and to anyone who stands in AEW's way. We have a mission to knock the pillars of this industry on their ass. We ain't reading history books anymore. We're writing them, baby. This is what you call a paradigm shift. From, of course, Jon Moxley at the beginning of the week, this amazing promo, which we would later learn was just him going off the cuff, nobody working on it with him, man, just camera, Jon Moxley, turn it on and see what happens, right? And
yeah, because that's AEW.
Wrestling.
Yeah. And I mean, you can the promos that we've seen last week at Double or Nothing, some of the videos we've seen, with Moxley and other guys, in interviews with MJF, you can tell very distinctly when they're just rolling with things of like they've sat down and beforehand, they've thought about it, it's like, okay, this is the big point I need to make. This is my bullet point. Other than that, I'm going to run with it. And you can tell the difference in the promos between these and the ones that happened in Raw last week, where it's like very mechanical and like you're building to the mean to hit that one point and hit that crowd pop and like, oh, okay, they didn't pop, but I'll just keep talking and reading through my script. Whereas with, Mox just rolling with it and looks like that crazy person that he was always trying to be in WWE, but hamstrung at every single opportunity. And man, I mean, I wasn't a fan of him in WWE. He was just kind of meh to me.
Sure.
But, seeing him hit the crowd at Double or Nothing, the backstage stuff from Road to Double or Nothing where he's, so amped up and so excited to just run out there. And then this promo and the video he did, dude, I'm in. He's changed my mind here. I need to see him wrestle some, but as far as promo-wise, yeah, I'm in.
Jon, he's got this thing about him, and he always had it in WWE. You could see it in glimpses when he wasn't trying to turn their horrible writing into something that was remotely enjoyable. He's dangerous in a way that's like really important for entertainment. It's important no matter what you do. Like a rock band needs to be dangerous. Always a musician, right? That's the whole idea behind changing up your set list and stuff like that is danger in entertainment is anything that wouldn't be expected, right? And when you go and see a comedian, that's what's great about a comedian is when they hit the punchline and it's not what you thought it was going to be, right? And Jon Moxley and Dean Ambrose always had that sort of danger about him, but WWE's writing doesn't really have a lot of it. That's why something so simple as Sami Zayn saying, "You could ask me about AEW," gets this huge reaction online because it's fucking dangerous, because you weren't seeing it coming, right? Whereas every other promo in WWE isn't. I'm not going to come on here and paint WWE as, every promo is suffering succotash and all that shit, right? But
a lot of them are.
And I wouldn't even go there. Although it is funny to say that. I wouldn't even go there. Very few of them are like this promo.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like, just of the... I can't really think of one off the top of my head that I've seen in WWE that really drew me in like this. I mean, obviously, the pipe bomb with Punk, but, since then it's always been the standard promo. Of like, yeah, there's always that X factor where they'll pop the crowd and stuff, but nothing like where you're just watching this and it changes your mind entirely.
Yeah, and there's just you can get as many writers as you want together. It's very difficult for them to write promos like this. And he's so him being in this company is night and day from his character in WWE.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's like seeing your dad when he's out with his friends. Here's a man that you think you know. And then with one promo, you realize that you've really only ever seen him on his best behavior. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, like we watched him in Double or Nothing, and he came out and was like, okay, cool. It's a run-in. It's kind of a little generic, but, you know, he's doing, you know, things. And it's different, but it's still kind of the same. And then you see this, and you're like, oh, shit.
This is what sold me. And it's crazy that they just put it out on social media, you know? Like, it's not part of the show or anything like that. They just fucking put it out on social media. And that's probably, we'll talk about it later, how that seems to be a real strategy for this company.
Yeah, I mean, they did add it to one of the videos this week. I can't remember which one. Probably the Road to Double or Nothing.
Yeah,
which
was
would
Road to Double or Nothing they used it.
Which is all, you know, valid to do because they do have the people who just are tuning in for that, don't watch everything. So, you know, you might have missed this. So... But either way, they just, you know, dropped this up on Twitter and then, bam, it's there.
I think that as a performer, the sky's the limit for him. I think we've seen him at 10% brain power for the last fucking 5 years. I think with the training that he's had in WWE and how to deal with those big crowds, you know, and Cody has that same training. The Bucks have that same training. Kenny has that same training. He's got the potential to be the Stone Cold of AEW, of this conflict, in the same way that you know, Stone Cold was fired from WCW and then went over to the other side and became this big force for them, right? I think Jon Moxley could be that force. A little bit of a different situation, but.
No, it's a little different, but there are a lot of those similarities there with Stone Cold, and I mean also as well as Triple H. Triple H got, you know, kind of fired from WCW and then went over to WWE, and he literally did become a superstar. As much as you may not like him for what he has turned into and the way he, you know, portrayed himself and did, you know, he did some shitty things in the crowd and to the locker room and stuff, but he did leave a company, to the competition and become a superstar. Same as Stone Cold and a little bit Mick Foley, but, you know, there's a lot of analogies there. And I think, like you, Moxley could be some crazy and good X factor to AEW, as well as just giving it the needed star power with Jericho. Because, I mean, we've seen a couple things that have come out where Jericho is essentially doing a limited schedule, which is fine. He's an older guy. He's got other interests.
He doesn't need to do more.
No, absolutely not. I mean, him just being at the big shows, and if he's only wrestling at the big shows and then just doing promos everywhere else, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
He knows his role is to be the star power at the beginning to help build up the company. And at some point, he'll step away to allow Joey Janela, MJF, Hangman, Moxley, all these guys take over to be the superstars.
And it'll be fine. Because it's okay if your big star leaves the show, it's okay as long as you have good stuff to fill in the place. And that
right,
people would
absolutely.
want to see, right? So, hey. Speaking of Jericho, Jericho, I want to talk about this briefly, just as kind of a buyer beware for the future StarCast thing. StarCast, a great event, helps draw attention to AEW shows. Don't want to shit on it, really, but this last one had a lot of issues. The Ric Flair roast, not all of them were Conrad's fault. This one kind of seems to be Conrad's fault. Apparently,
I would still say a little bit of the stuff with the Ric Flair roast, especially coming towards the Wednesday before, was a little bit on Conrad. He should have, when they knew Flair was in the hospital again, they should have absolutely just nixed it. Not just like, oh yeah, TMZ saying things, but I know better. It's like, no, dude, no.
Yeah, no, it's not gonna happen. And a number of other events that like just didn't happen. But so Jericho allegedly put out a statement the other day where he said that he had pulled out of StarCast a while ago, months ago.
I believe over a month, he said, yeah.
And
so,
they advertised it up until the day, and then threw out the excuse, oh, he didn't get a thank you, so he's not showing up or whatever. But apparently, according to Jericho, he had said, I'm not going to do it
after my match
months before because of a conflict with Westwood One and being on the StarCast Stream Pass. Like they didn't want it in both places. Understandable, it's their show. He sold that show to them, so he can't really. He's beholden to that.
Right. I mean, if you have someone producing and hosting your show, you do what they say.
Right. And some people have said it's on Jericho. It's to a certain extent on Jericho. It's way more on Conrad because he's the promoter. He should be and card subject to change or whatever, but not when people are buying stream passes for specific events and you know somebody's not going to be there. That's just fucking false advertising.
Yeah.
Now,
I feel bad for people that did pay the $15 or whatever just for Jericho's podcast because that's the one they wanted to watch. I feel bad for people that paid for the actual tickets to be in the room. But I mean, it's like you said, just keep this in mind for StarCast 3 and in the future that card is always subject to change, but there could be some potentially shady shit happening.
This one had a lot of changes.
It did. And
growing pains for that place, man.
Yeah, up till the day of the event, I mean, there was a lot of growing pains. I mean, Monday before Double or Nothing, me and you were expecting, it's like, okay, how are we going to watch this press conference? Because neither of us were like really comfortable paying $40 to watch a press conference
when we were paying $50 for the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and that was the real issue, is that we were paying, $90, $100. It's getting steep now.
It's not even that. It's just a value proposition. Like I knew I wasn't going to get a large percentage of the enjoyment I got out of the pay-per-view out of that StarCast pass. I just knew that wasn't going to be there for me value-wise. I knew if I'm paying $50 for the pay-per-view, I'm not going to pay almost as much
or
for
more.
A press conference, which I'm glad I didn't pay for because it was fucking horrible. Yeah,
so it became a real issue. We found out, and we lucked out on that one. We got the free podcast or the free press conference, so we were good to go. But I do feel for people that had pre-ordered the 4-day pass or whatever ahead of time because like, oh yeah, I need to watch the press conference, I need to watch all these podcasts, and then you get to the event and they're like, oh yeah, we're switching things around. Here's
certainly
Tommy Dreamer.
Certainly if you bought it because of the press conference, which it was advertised as you were going to have to pay it for the press conference forever. And then they were like, "Oh no, that's free now." Then it's like, "Well, okay, well, fuck." And maybe, maybe you could go to the Fight app and get that refunded or whatever. I don't know. We didn't go through it. But let's get to the BTE breakdown. Being the Elite number 154 backstage at Double or Nothing, which dropped on Monday. Which is pretty wild that they were able to get that turnaround time on it. The episode opens in the wings of the Grand Garden Arena. Cameras swarm around Jon Moxley, who could be described as pensive, as he waits for the end of Jericho's promo. I love how they did this because, in the other company that he worked in, WWE, he would enter from the crowd like this, and whenever they would show videos of him and the Shield entering from the crowd, there would always be people swarmed around with cameras or whatever, right? And they're so close to the end of the show, you'd think there'd be people out there, but they're in a casino in Vegas, which means nobody's trying to beat the traffic, right?
Yeah, right. Like that's the big thing. Is like the majority of the crowd knows, like, okay, cool. There's no real traffic. We're just gonna walk back to our other hotel,
right? Or walk upstairs.
Yeah, or upstairs, or, we're going to walk over to the club for the after party, whatever.
Right.
But everybody's just sitting there and is so engaged in the content as well. That was a amazing thing. The funniest thing about this video to me is the drastic upscale in quality because they were doing it at Double or Nothing, so they had all of the film, the good cameras for everything. So you're just watching like this superstar episode of Being the Elite because it's not filmed on goddamn phones.
Well, some of it was, but it's
For
better.
the most part, it's enough.
At least maybe it looks like maybe they got a phone gimbal or something like that to use from somebody. I do think it's a shame we never get to see him actually go out, but we kick to the title sequence, and then post-title sequence, there's an update with Matt and Dana, who are driving into Vegas on Thursday.
This
Matt
was
says,
so funny, dude.
well, for anyone who's been in a position like this before where the job isn't exactly what you thought it would be, he figured that being part of a big company like AEW would be a goodbye to lugging around his own merchandise. He then shows us that the entire back of his minivan is full of merch boxes.
Yeah, he was just like, oh yeah, I'm an EVP of this giant company. We can just have everything shipped over. It'll be great. I just gotta lounge my way into Vegas. It'll be great. And then you just flip back and he's like, yeah, I'm carrying all my goddamn t-shirts again.
Of course, Nick flew in, which is hilarious.
I think he had all the kids too, so that's fine.
Okay.
But the funny thing is, like, his wife Dana is just in the car and trying so hard not to laugh.
The next few scenes are just some shots sort of walking around StarCast before the team encounters Fat Ass Massa, who I did not know, but is apparently he was on BTE all the time back in the day. He's what people call a host or a sponsor, which means he takes wrestling talent out for food, drinks, partying after the show on his own dime out of appreciation for their art form. And really just like to get to hang out with wrestlers, which I guess if you got the kind of money to do that and that's what you want, hell yeah, man.
Yeah, in Japan, it's kind of a different thing over there.
Oh, yeah.
I was doing some research about it because like being a host and a sponsor it's an actual job in Japan. I mean, sometimes the majority of the time he's also working for a different company doing this to build relationships with advertisers, merchandise, whatever. But yeah, I've seen him occasionally in other BTE episodes when I've randomly watched one. But yeah, he's a really cool dude. He's very big in Japan, but over here he's still kind of an unknown figure. Unless you're in this ecosystem.
Yeah. Even if you don't know these things, you do get the impression that they're tight with him, that they know him from the Japan days. In the next scene, the Elite send Massa out in their stead after they're introduced for an evening with Cody and the Bucks, and he actually gets a decent pop. Like, people are cheering Massa.
Yeah, they were super happy to see him, man. It was great.
Next, there's a short montage of meet and greet footage from StarCast, and bro, the fucking lines, man.
That's exactly what I expected them to be.
Oh,
they're honestly
God.
They're a little short.
The longest fucking line I've ever seen, bro.
I mean, having gone to Dragon Con for 11 years now, that was pretty light. I'm expecting a much, much, much longer line this year with David Tennant being there. But
Sure.
yeah, that's kind of the thing I expect. But it was exactly what I expected for the Cody and the Bucks. And yeah.
Next is footage of when MJF got thrown out of the press conference, which is still funny.
And a little bit more info there of why he got thrown out of the press conference.
I got it from a better angle, too, which is nice. Cool arena setup, time lapse after that. We sort of see quick footage, time lapse footage of them sort of setting up and flying the light and sound rigs in the arena, which is a lot of money and a lot of expertise and very difficult to do. And you don't really appreciate it until you see how long even time-lapse footage takes of them adjusting, and then they fly it, and then they have to bring it back down and readjust things and then fly it again. And it's super hard and super dangerous to do. So.
As someone that works in software development, I feel their pains because I've had things like that I work on, like, okay, I cannot test this on my machine. I have to deploy it up to our cluster, and maybe it'll work during the deployment, but it's going to take me 15 minutes to do this build. And then it's like, okay, cool. It didn't work. Let me go change this one line, and then I'll do it again.
You know, I'm sure they put all that stuff together, and then they fly it up there, and one light isn't working, and they don't know why, right? They got to pull it back down.
Yeah. Been there.
Horrible. Next is a day later, and we get to see Matt live react to walking in and seeing the setup in person for the first time, which is nice footage to have. Sean Carr, AEW's head of ring crew, enters the room and talks briefly with Nick about how beautiful the ring is, about how he can't thank him enough for the opportunity to be there, and they seem really tight. No sort of background information on him, but he, I guess, seems like a good guy. We then move through to a pyro test, which is awesome.
As you should.
And then there's a cool shot of the 4 EVPs walking down the ramp. Then we move to Cody testing the breakaway throne, just a bunch of sort of test footage of them sort of setting up the arena, which is really cool. We next cut to an empty StarCast hall with Cody and the Bucks for a admittedly staged reveal of the AEW World Title.
So staged, but it was a great little thing, and it was really funny the way they did it. I was really happy with all of it.
It's a reveal with belt maker Dave Milliken, by the way.
Yeah, and then the best part is afterwards when they are up in someone's fucking hotel room.
It's so gorgeous. Dave does reveal that it took him 34 hours in stonework alone, which I'm sure is going to be great when one of them fucking falls out. That's all, that's all I can think about.
If he spent 34 hours on stonework, I'm estimating that the belt itself took easily over 100, probably closer to 200 hours of, putting it together and everything.
Oh, yeah, it's a big layered plate and shit. So
it is. It's absolutely gorgeous, and you and I talked about it a little bit last week, but god damn it, I hope they put one out because I want one.
It's gonna be a long time, man.
I don't care.
A long time.
I'll buy
it. Contact Dave. I'm sure he's got so many nerds hitting him up.
I can't afford that one.
Quick cut to the EVPs in somebody's hotel suite, which I spelled the wrong way in the notes. Just sort of playing around with the belt. You could tell that they are just like sort of beside themselves in this moment. Like this had to be one of the moments where it was like, oh shit, this is real, or at least it had better be because this belt was really expensive.
Yeah, it's really one of those moments where you can tell like this initially started out as like, oh yeah, like some shit I would do and be recording and putting on Snapchat to be fucking with people.
Right.
And then they were like, realized like, oh, let's put this on the show.
Nick says he might have to go singles so that he can get the belt, which is pretty funny.
I'm down, man. Let's do it.
Crossfade to some live band karaoke from StarCast, where they sing sort of BTE related songs and old themes and things like that.
Which was funny because all the SCU guys were playing instruments.
Next is some adorable footage of Matt's little boy Zach in the ring for the first time on the morning of Double or Nothing. Zach squashes his dad in less than a minute with a devastating DDT followed by a nasty diving knee drop from the bottom rope.
Earl Hebner counted him out, man.
Earl Hebner counted it, man. Kind of everybody in the ring counted it, but
yeah. But, I mean, these were the things like it's this one, and then they had one last week where they're just really tugging at the heartstrings here.
Yeah. Turns out Matt, without Nick, beat by a small child. That's embarrassing, right?
Yeah. He probably, definitely shouldn't go singles.
We then see the All Out promo, which we've all seen more than once. But I guess it's good to have it here in case you're the type of person who's only watching Being the Elite.
It was that, as well as, you may have missed it and All In because, you had to go to the bathroom, whatever, or you just caught the end of it for, whatever reason. But it was nice to just put it here, keep building the hype because obviously that's what you need to do. But it was, a good portion for it. You know, you get the full promo, you get a little bit better audio, and you see all of the cool graphics that they put together.
Mm-hmm. There was a funny scene with Fat Ass Massa and Iron Mike Tyson, where Massa's showing him a photo that he took with him years ago, which is pretty great. There's a lot of stuff with Iron Mike this week, which is nice.
The part, I think it was in Road to Double or Nothing, with Mike and Jericho giggling like school children was goddamn amazing,
man. We're going to get there. Next. Nick is taking Flip Gordon around in his mask from All In. Cody has a funny line here that says, "At least you're not that piece of shit Flip Gordon, huh? You don't do jobs." You know, and then Flip takes off the mask and because, you know, but they knew who it was. Next, they bump into Hangman, who is either playing to the camera or literally has no idea who it is. Until
it's Hangman, so it's very likely that it was the second one.
I think he was just caught off guard, you know?
Yeah.
Flip takes the mask off and he figures out, he's like, oh, okay. Oh, man. But there is a moment where he does look into the camera behind Flip's back and points at him and is like, who is this?
Yeah. You can tell he like legit thought it was like a fan or something. He's like, oh, that's cool,
but
man.
He still hugged him. So good to know. If you want a hug from Hangman Page, just approach him like he has no choice and it's going to happen and he'll do it.
Yeah. That was like a little nice touch there, is just how friendly and outgoing these guys are that you don't always expect from wrestlers, because, you know, everybody's heard the horror stories of some of the WWE guys, like Brock Lesnar just will not speak to you.
I'm not condoning just throwing hugs at Hangman Page, but all I'm saying is he's shown that he's open to it.
Yeah.
In the next scene, Scorpio Sky tries to gift Frankie Kazarian his Apollo Creed themed ring gear from All In. He wants Kazarian to wear them tonight. Kazarian refuses. He says, "I can't wear them. They say Scorpio on them. They probably don't fit me, and we have brand new SCU ring gear that we're going to wear tonight." Scorp says, "You just make sure that you wash them before you give them back, all right? And when this is over, you owe me a favor."
So fucking weird, dude.
Such a weird scene. This is one of the funnier SCU scenes that I've seen, though. Scorpio exits, Kazarian throws the trunks, and they land on CD's face, and that's the end of this scene. It's just weird. Just a weird scene. But I thought it was entertaining. I liked it.
It was funny, but it was just like, what the fuck are you guys doing?
Next is the BTE phone cam version of the Matt, Nick, Q credentials scene from the opening of Double or Nothing. I I like that they shot this with that like fancy like focused DSLR for the show, and then they fucking also shot it with the camera phone for the YouTube show.
Yeah, you gotta have the footage on your iPhone, buddy.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I guess that's part of their workflow, right? We move to a live crowd shot of everybody reacting to Hangman coming out at number 21. Next is a funny scene between Jabali and Michael Nakazawa. Jabali says, "Nice job in the Battle Royale, loser. I'll see you at Fyter Fest, Michael." And then Nakazawa pulls the baby oil from beside him in the seat, shoots it all over the floor in front of Jabali, who does the least graceful fall I've ever seen.
Oh yeah,
If that's his ability to take a bump, I'm worried about the match.
He might die.
Michael Nakazawa leans over Jabali and says his own name like a Pokemon, which is nice.
It's fine, dude. It's fine.
We then move to.
I don't know what the fuck's gonna happen with this match, but I'm very entertained, so it's fine.
Yeah, it'll be stupid. It'll be fucking stupid. Like it's.
I don't care, man.
It's a hardcore match between Michael Nakazawa and Jabali. It'll be stupid. It'll be good.
I want to see how bad the blade job's gonna be. Like he's just sitting in the corner of the ring, and you can tell he's just looking around,
just bleeding baby oil.
Yeah.
Awesome shot of Tony, Mr. Ass, Nick, Matt, Cody, Dustin, Brandy, others watching the show from Gorilla and feasting on red vines.
Everyone so fucking random. They just have a big old tub of red vines just sitting there, and Cody's handing them off and like, All right. Okay.
Look, somebody brought snacks, okay? So at least somebody had the forethought to get the red vines. Kind of a weird choice, but hey, that's what they went with.
It's fine, but I mean, it's the funny thing to me is like you guys are, talking all this shit to Hangman about getting in shape, and you guys are sitting backstage before your matches eating fucking candy.
Chowing on red vines.
It was a really good shot. I really enjoyed, seeing Tony sitting there. He had his stopwatch, and he was really, really engaged with all of this, and that to me is a really good sign for the company.
Of course, everyone just marks out when Mox hits the aisle, and the crowd goes wild, and they hear the crowd. They're like, oh man. Then we cut through some live crowd footage from Mox's debut. To end the episode is a short scene between Mox and Joey Janela. Janela stares at Jon Moxley as he lights a cigarette. Moxley takes the cigarette from Janela, puffs one puff, and then flicks it against the wall inside, which is so dangerous.
Trying to start a fucking fire here, man.
But they're both kind of bad boys, And plus, it's a casino, right? Like, you can smoke in a casino, so there must be just flame retardant everything everywhere.
Probably.
Just never hear of anywhere burning down in Vegas, and that surprises me.
So interesting thing that I realized as watching Road to Double or Nothing, as well as just rewatching Double or Nothing and talking to people.
Yeah.
The scene in the Battle Royale where Janela just has the cigarette kind of like taped to his head.
It's stapled.
It's stapled from Jimmy Havoc.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole big thing. It stapled it from Jimmy Havoc, but they did it at the same time as somebody being eliminated, so it didn't get caught by the cameras. And that's unfortunate that Joey Janela got a staple in his forehead and nobody saw it.
And apparently Tommy Dreamer got one to his ball sack.
Well,
Ish.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His pants, but yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm saying
if there
is
were
I'm down
even
with the
staples
staple
in it
gun.
at all, you know what I mean? Like, that's the great thing about the staple gun gimmick is that you can have staples. You can have the staples for the two spots you want to do in the beginning, right?
Yeah,
and then by the time you get around to the weak spot, you don't have any more staples left. But no one can tell, right? It still operates the same with no staples in it. So
yeah, still makes the noise. Yeah.
By the way, we recommend go to YouTube. Watch the Best Friends Titantron video that they uploaded this week.
So goddamn weird.
to AEW's YouTube channel, which was uploaded this week at Chuck's behest. And it's super silly. It apparently started out as just stock models holding hands, but then after they released it, Chuck tweeted a group text with the quote, "I wouldn't mind seeing a puppy dog or two floating around in there, and maybe some aliens and ghosts too." And if you watch the video, that's what's in the fucking video. It's people holding hands, and then every now and then there's a puppy, and then there's aliens and ghosts in there.
It's very much as if they said, "Hey, Chuck, Trent, what do you guys want for your video?" And they're like, models holding hands. That'll be fine. And then they're like, "Hey, what about the aliens and the puppy dogs?" I'm like, okay, fuck it. And they threw it all together. It's just this hacky video because they couldn't get any actual information from Chuck and Trent.
Dude, Chuck just says shit like hoping that people won't call his bluff, and then people do, and you end up with shit like this, which is great.
Yeah. And it's also clear that they're doing this because he's a goddamn moron, and he's like, "You threatened our goddamn family, buddy. Do you want to go there again?"
Kenny also released a video for his theme song this week as well. It's very him. I think it takes a little bit long to get moving, but it's very him. The theme is called Battle Cry and was composed by YouTuber Little V Mills. Very 80s video game rock and roll type thing.
Yeah, pretty much. It's exactly what I expected from Kenny. It's cool.
Right.
It's not something I'm going to put on, a Spotify playlist, but it's cool.
New matches announced. Announced this week via social media, the bad boy, Joey Janela, is to be the first to face AEW newcomer Jon Moxley at Fyter Fest on June 29th in Daytona Beach, Florida.
That'll
be a wild
hardcore match.
I would assume that it is. I mean, with this one and the Michael Nakazawa thing, I'm thinking maybe Fyter Fest is going to lean towards that anyway.
That could be, just a default of like, everything's hardcore, guys. Go wild.
Maybe not everything, but they've got 2 already at least.
I mean,
Darby's no stranger to that sort of match either, so...
Neither is Cody, so it's essentially 3 matches for Fyter Fest are kind of hardcore.
You know, which is fine because they're going to be pulling in a big casual audience with CEO, and that sort of stuff is what excites Fighting Game fans, you know? The stuff that's really like that. Next up, Chris Jericho and Hangman Page are set to do battle to crown the very first AEW World Champion at All Out on August 31st in Chicago, Illinois. That's going to be a hell of a match. And nice to get confirmation from Jericho. I think he kind of let it slip out during a podcast, and they were just like, well, he said it, so I guess.
Yeah, he was doing an interview on Busted Open Radio on Sirius, which is also now podcasted. But yeah, he kind of let that slip out, and then they were like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
then it went up on social media like a day later. They were like, fuck it. He said it already. All right.
Which is fine. I mean, that's something you really need to start building up for All Out. Obviously there's going to be a good crowd of people that are going to go regardless.
Sure.
But that you have that match announced is a good thing to drive people to looking like, oh yeah, man, that's going to be awesome. I really want to see that. Okay, tickets go on sale in 2 weeks. Cool.
Yeah. The last piece of new match information is that Pac has finally been removed from Fyter Fest advertisements. This match will now be Omega and the Young Bucks versus TBA and the Lucha Bros. As to who that will be, I don't know. There's a number.
Some crazy predictions in the Discord this week.
Yeah. I don't know. Luchasaurus would be cool. I mean, Jericho. Although I don't think Jericho's on the show.
So Jericho mentioned either during Talk Is Jericho, or it may have been one of the backstage interviews that he's not booked until Jacksonville.
Okay.
So that makes a lot of sense. He may not even be booked for Jacksonville. He could have just been thinking like, I think I'm booked on that show. That seems likely. Mm-hmm. He's put out a lot of stuff on social media that he is going to be at Fight for the Fallen. So that's where I would expect his next match to be. Also, Jericho really didn't fit well in that match.
Well, I mean, he does because he's feuding with Omega, right? Omega Bucks, Jericho, Lucha Bros, right? Like that.
Sure.
That's what would be the obvious one to me. That or Mox, but Mox already has a match, right? So.
But you could also. There's also other guys you could push in that. You could pull a AAA guy and build that partnership. Mm-hmm. There's there's a long list of people you could slot in there, and you'd be fine with a good match going forward. But it's going to be, interesting to see how they play it out to who they put in there, because the match is already going to be great. I think this is just going to push it a little bit further into being amazing.
I also heard rumblings of Mox versus Omega at All Out in a Chicago street fight, but I could not confirm it, and so I didn't want to put it on the official list. But maybe. It's a maybe.
Oh, man. I'm down for that match. The only thing I will say about that is really one that I would be much rather be watching a pay-per-view on, because a Chicago street fight means they're going all over the fucking arena.
Dude, that's why you gotta be there. The next piece of news, Joey Ryan to remain an independent wrestler. This comes to us from our good friend Daniel Yanofsky at WrestlingInc.com. This is sort of tangentially related to AEW, but I wanted to talk about it because of all the speculation that has been around him in AEW. There have been a lot of questions as to where Joey Ryan would be heading following his recent legal battle with Lucha Underground. While AEW and WWE had both reportedly been interested in signing him, Ryan has decided to go a different route. Joey Ryan stated at a bar wrestling event last night, he turned down lucrative deals from multiple promotions. He will remain on the independent scene where he built and innovated his brand. Over the years, Ryan has become the king of dong style and has been known for his intergender matches. It was before this promo that he actually faced Priscilla Kelly. He stated that he wouldn't be able to be his true self if he took a deal with another promotion. Ryan, 39, compared himself to Aladdin, stating that he wanted to be a prince, but he knew he had to be his true, authentic self. Bit of a reach, but I understand you want to pick something recent, right? He went on to say that independent wrestling and its fans have become the blonde girl he's been looking for on Being the Elite. It's, that one I actually think is kind of clever that they finally got to that, and maybe we'll see that on the show next week, right?
Probably, and then we can just be done with that fucking segment.
That's the end of the segment. He finished by saying that he may be a big fish in a small pond, but it is his pond. This is nice. Good for Joey. I guess if he doesn't want to come to AEW, it's fine. I think there could have been a useful spot for him, but he wants to stay on the indies, and more power to him if that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, I think him being in AEW was also he would have had a good spot, but they would have had to change so much of his style and gimmick because it's really not TV friendly at all. Sure. So it's fine. I mean, it would have been the same with WWE. But he's really got a good thing going with bar wrestling. That's his baby.
Yeah.
And I feel like a part of that would have been either deal would have been like, hey, you're done with this.
I agree to a certain extent. I will say, if he's happy doing what he's doing, making what he's making, then okay. Stay where you are. Fuck yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. But at the same time, I will say when he wrestled in Lucha Underground, we were covering it at the time, he didn't do the dong style thing, which, for the record, I'm a fan of. I like the dong style gimmick. But he played basically the same character without the dong style thing, was still like a sleazy weirdo guy, right? And it was great. He was great. So, yeah, he probably would have had to leave the dick stuff in the past, but I don't really know how much more money he can wring out of that gimmick. It kind of feels like he's been doing it long enough now that
it's kind of done.
It's over. He's done all the stuff with it, right? And again, I say that as a fan of the gimmick. I'm not fucking Jim Cornette over here being like, But
which is
really I don't know how much more there is in that gimmick, unfortunately.
It's really funny how much just lease time that Joey Ryan has in Jim Cornette's mind.
For someone you hate, you think about him an awful lot.
Yeah. But I really think what this really does come down to is that he is really passionate about his promotion, bar wrestling, and I really feel that AEW and WWE, while they probably both says dude, you can't have a competing promotion. Yeah, you're indie, but we need your full time.
It's a bit of a vanity label, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think that if you're doing something that you're passionate about and you love doing your own label and your own promotion, then just keep doing that. Be happy with what you're doing. I think he would have been really good in AEW as well, especially with getting intergender matches on the table and getting people to understand that this is a thing. People can do this. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But, there's nothing saying that he can't just show up for a one-off or occasionally.
Right. He's just not signed anywhere, Right.
Which just basically means he won't be on TV.
Right. So he says, at least, we don't even know if it's real or not, right?
Look at all the stuff we had to go through with Dustin.
By the way, go to YouTube and watch MJF's interview with Chris Van Vliet on his channel. What a fucking star MJF is, dude. He just runs circles around this guy for a half an hour, orders food, shows up from housekeeping in the middle of the interview.
He calls the room service lady a hooker.
And it's so quick, so just amazing character work. And if you're into that sort of thing, Van Vliet can't fucking keep up, man.
He really
keeps trying to get ahead of him, and he can't. Like, MJF is ready, dude.
If you want to see a real good example of a guy just rolling through things off the cuff and rolling through essentially a long form promo, watch this interview because MJF doesn't break character at all.
It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
I mean, you combo this with the video that was popping around on Twitter this week of where he almost assaulted a child because they were like, "Hey, you're MJF. I like you," and he's like, "Don't touch me."
Yeah, the child touched him. Apparently, also, he was on the way to an interview at StarCast Weekend, and he noticed a guy in the window of a restaurant eating in a Bullet Club t-shirt or AEW t-shirt or something, and he apparently stood there and stared at the guy until the guy noticed him and then said, "Fuck you," and walked away. So I love MJF is just in it, dude, all the time, and it's wonderful.
I'm fucking sold, man. I gotta order a shirt.
Let's move on to some big news. Estimated buy rate for Double or Nothing could give AEW the record for non-WWE/WCW wrestling pay-per-view. This comes to us from Sean Reuter at CageSideSeats.com. Although really, it comes to us from Dave Meltzer.
Yeah.
According to this week's Wrestling Observer newsletter, All Elite Wrestling's debut pay-per-view, Double or Nothing, is estimated to have done 98,000 buys. Pay attention to that word, estimated. It means we don't really know yet.
Yes. One thing about pay-per-view buys is they always have estimates. It's essentially like seeing movie box offices. They won't know for like 5 to 7 days.
Yeah. Of course, we'll report that real number when we get it, if we ever do. That includes traditional cable/satellite and internet/streaming distribution, where the show is said to have done roughly 50-50 split, which is huge. Such a split represents what could be a significant shift in the market, as digital usually only accounts for a small percentage of the overall buys. About 66% of purchases came from the United States. The United Kingdom was comfortably the second biggest market for the show, followed by Australia, Germany, and Canada.
Canada's kind of a weird one, though, because they had to do it via BR Live, so that's kind of baked into in my opinion, it's baked into the U.S. numbers, but you never know. Mm-hmm.
The overall figure is not only good, it's potentially historically so. The previous record for a non-WWE/WCW pro wrestling event was 99,000 buys for ECW Heatwave in 1999. The fact that they have to go back that far should tell you something.
It is interesting because all of the fuckers on Reddit this week were like, "Oh yeah, it didn't do better than December to Dismember," and I'm like, "Yeah, WWE produced that show, guys. Calm down."
With replays, Double or Nothing is likely to pass that figure. For other comparisons, All In reportedly drew 55,000 buys in its 16-year history. The Observer says TNA/Impact has only approached 50K on a few occasions, which surprises me that they even came close to doing what All In did. But maybe it was when TNA had staying.
Yeah, they were probably doing those numbers are from like when TNA was at its height with, AJ, Samoa Joe, that core group that was where TNA was an actual competition to WWE. But then, yeah,
AEW was the second most searched item on Google Trends for Saturday, May 25th. Behind only the Toronto Raptors, who clinched their first ever NBA Finals appearance that night. The 220,000 searches done for All Elite the night of Double or Nothing was 12% more than the last UFC event and 35% more than WWE Money in the Bank. Second day search numbers on Sunday, May 26 widened those gaps, with AEW getting 4 times as many as AEW's last pay-per-view and 6 times UFC
WWE's
237.
last pay-per-view.
Huh?
You said AEW's last pay-per-view.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
For Money in the Bank. The indication here is that
People were interested, man.
What happened on the show? The reason why you look at next day searches is what happened on the show was more noteworthy than what would have happened on the other shows. Like, more people were trying to find out what happened on the show.
Yeah.
Which is nice that it was so much higher than the other than WWE and UFC.
Yeah, and it's very in line with some of my interactions I had last Sunday and Monday of just people like, hey, did you watch the show? And I'm like, yeah, man, what'd you think about it? And it's like, it was great, man. So a lot of interactions there. So this is showing that people were very, very interested in Double or Nothing, and that everybody's saying like, oh, well, it's just all hype. It's all hype. It's like, no. People are curious here. People want to know, want to see some competition. This is a good thing.
Yeah. Meltzer wrote that All In, New Japan's Tokyo Dome shows, nor G1 Supercard in Madison Square Garden ever placed in the top 20 Google Trends. NXT only did so once when there were 50,000 searches for March's TakeOver New York. A lot of really interesting numbers. 98,000 is a really good number, as they say here. It approaches some WWE pay-per-views, maybe close, but again, it's really hard to judge that with where the network is now, like how many people are really buying it on pay-per-view anymore. So
yeah, I mean, like when you look at the average UFC pay-per-view, that when I was really into it and watching it, they usually did 300 to 500 at a substantially higher price, as well as, it's a different sport, but it's still really kind of following that same demographic. When you look at the highest pay-per-view buy rate ever, which was one of the boxing fights, I think it was the Conor Mayweather one. It's either that one or the Mayweather Pacquiao, and that did like 3 million or some shit like that. Now, given a lot of those buys, it would have been substantially higher if you couldn't go to a bar and watch it. But still, when you're looking at 3 million versus 100K for a wrestling show compared to the biggest boxing match in history.
Yeah, that match was that. I had friends who never watched fights who bought that fucking pay-per-view.
Yeah,
so.
I did as well. I mean, people who you never really expected would watch boxing. I know people that went to bars or just ordered it themselves. So it's like, when you look at those kind of things, and like,
I watched it on Periscope.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah. So when you look at it like that, I wouldn't pay $100 for it. Yeah. When you think of it in that mindset of, AEW, a lot of people who did watch the show probably watched it at people's houses, watched it together. Obviously, there was, hundreds of thousands of people also pirating the show. Yeah. But when your first pay-per-view ever does 100K at around $50 a pop, dude, that's money.
I think the big interest for them is that half of it was streaming.
Yeah, and because that's the big factor right now. Traditional pay-per-view is, it's kind of dying.
Well, yeah, but even they were saying traditional pay-per-view for UFC is not like that, even now. Like, UFC is still bought through traditional pay-per-view.
So, there's part of a reason behind that, and that's because of the new ESPN deal.
Oh, yeah.
You have to be watching it like on the Disney Plus or whatever, or UFC Fight Pass, but you still have to buy it through pay-per-view. So there's like a level of complexity and an extra pay scale that you have to pay through.
Some like number fuckery going on.
Yeah, but like back in the day with UFC, when it was just straight pay-per-view, 300 to 500K was average. That's we're on that pace easily, and it's a wrestling show. That's not what you expect to hear of a wrestling show.
And it's the first one.
Yeah, it's the first one. There's only room to grow.
This past Wednesday at midnight, Chris Jericho, the Ayatollah of rock and roll, posted the now viral Talk is Jericho episode called The Emancipation of Jon Moxley, which went on to pull over 600,000 downloads, more than twice that of his most downloaded episode previous, in less than 1 week. for anyone who's wondering about this number,
That's up there with like cereal.
well, yes, and then r/squared circle has 400,000 people there, which means he got everyone on that subreddit and then 200,000 people to listen to this thing in his first week.
Yes, to really put that into perspective, that's like, you know, the most popular podcast of all time has been Serial about that court case. This is those kind of numbers.
Is wild. It's a wild amount of numbers. I would be interested to hear what Colt's numbers for the Punk podcast were, but I don't know if we have any numbers for them.
But that's probably going to be lifetime because a lot of people listen to that way after the fact.
Yeah, and it's been referenced on a bunch of things since then. And whatnot, so.
Now, if you could check the numbers for that of just on the week that the court case went up, you'd probably be close.
Right.
But still, man, this is insane amount of people listening to this podcast.
The bulk of the interview speaks of Moxley's frustration with the creative process at World Wrestling Entertainment, which we won't get into greatly here. Go and listen to the show. I highly recommend it. It's eye-opening. There are some interesting AEW moments, though, which we'll go over here, including Moxley's take on AEW's creative philosophy of play your music your way. Quote, dude, the first time I heard that, when you were like, I was like, man, you know, telling me all this stuff about play your music your way and everything, that's amazing. Like, I want to be a part of this 100%. Like, let's go. I'm with you. Let's take on the world. Let's make history, end quote. Moxley went on to paint Cody Rhodes as a kindred spirit with a genuine passion for professional wrestling. Quote, me and him would always just sit there and watch all this wrestling and talk about it because we were just like, we love wrestling. And he has we think of wrestling in a very similar way. And just everything he said from the get-go was like, yo, play your music your way. And, you know, he went through a lot of the same stuff during his exit from WWE. When I was telling him about he was like, I went through the same thing, you know? Was like kind of depression you go through when you're trapped in something you don't want to be. We share that experience. I feel like me and him are kind of two sides of the same coin in a lot of ways, being through a lot of the same experiences, but we went through them at different times and in a different order. I like that wrestling can be anything, you know? He says it can be anything. We can have the lucha guys and we can have the hardcore match and you can have the old school. And I'm like, for so long, I've been told wrestling is this. This is all wrestling is. When asked what he thought of AEW president Tony Khan, Mox had this to say, quote, it's what you said. He's the exact opposite of Vince, but I liked him. The thing I like about him, man, is that he's a wrestling fan. He can sit and talk to you about ECW pay-per-views from '98. He's more of a wrestling fan than Vince is. Vince loves sports entertainment and loves promoting, and he's a 24/7 workhorse. But Tony's just like a fan. He loves wrestling, and it's just like so fun to talk to anybody about. End quote.
I mean, it also doesn't, you know, it helps matters that Tony is like our age.
Right. Which is a big point to make, and I'm going to come back to it. It also helps that Tony hasn't been promoting wrestling for the last 50 years.
Yeah, definitely.
You know,
yeah, definitely does.
No matter how much you love your fucking job, if you do it every single week for 50 years, you don't love your job anymore. It's just how it is.
Especially when it's the exact same thing with no changing at all.
Well, especially when you're 150 fucking years old, too. Like, come on, man. No matter what you pride yourself on, like, you're going to get tired of it.
Most people at Vince's age have already retired.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Most people at Vince's age have already fucking died. Like, The man's old,
Yeah,
you know,
he's
and the man's been doing the same thing for a long time, working at a high level for a long time. So, of course, he's not going to have the same passion as a dude who just started his new company and is ready to take on the world, right? That's just not there in him. But it is important to note Tony Khan's age. Him being sort of around the age of us, he's quite a bit older than me, even older than you by a couple of years.
Yeah, he's closer to my age. I mean, he's 36, but I mean, when you look at like the target audience of like a wrestling fan, he is smack dab in that demographic.
Right, he's in that pocket. He went to ECW shows as a kid.
Yeah,
you know, and it's no surprise, just like it's no surprise that there's such a huge influx of talent nowadays. Like, you look back, what happened 20 years ago, right? Like the biggest period in the history of televised wrestling, right? So of course there's going to be a lot of talent now. You can examine that with anything in history. If you go back 20 years and you're like, okay, that's why Freakonomics did a thing about Roe versus Wade eventually affecting the crime rate, if you look back 20 years, right? So really everything affects everything. And if you have this huge boom period for wrestling, of course, 20 years later, you're going to have a bunch of great talents now working.
I mean, exactly. And like, just that he is of that age range, because it's not just he's that in the pocket of the good wrestling demographic, but he's really the same age as all of the guys who are on his executive vice president team. They're all in their, mid 30s. So they all get along. They all saw the same things growing up. They're all passionate about wrestling because
they're all culturally aware.
Yeah, that's the big thing right there.
So it's easy for them to talk to one another. You know what I mean? Now, check out the interview for more on podcast services everywhere. It really is worth a listen if you're an AEW fan, or if you really want to know more about how WWE works specifically.
Or if you just want to hear a really good Jon Moxley interview that is not awkward as fuck like the Stone Cold one.
Really takes you inside of the creative dysfunction at WWE right now. And really paints a rather bleak picture. And of course, a bunch of news has come out from Meltzer saying that there's a bunch of talents who are just waiting for their opportunity to give their interview. He said there was a not insignificant number of talents who are ready to go, and that some of them may surprise you, which was kind of clickbaity, right?
That's that's 100%.
Kind of sounds like a BuzzFeed article, right? Number 5 will surprise you, but it is, I guess, interesting to report around this. But I want to move on. Reported details behind AEW on TNT deal. Production covered, ad revenue split, and more. Most of our news this week comes from Meltzer because he's the only one really reporting on these things.
Well, yeah, there's that. There's also, it's just the, Double or Nothing happened, so Cody and everybody went on actual vacation, so there's not a lot of, good stuff on that end, but yeah.
The write-up is from Dominic D'Angelo at WrestleZone.com, but once again, really...
It's from Dave.
Dave said it. Dave Meltzer, via his latest Wrestling Observer Radio with Brian Alvarez, is reporting several details regarding AEW's TV deal with TNT and Warner Media. According to Meltzer, AEW is getting an ad revenue split, production paid for and guaranteed for the ad revenue split. The 2 days in talks to broadcast a weekly show are either Wednesday or Tuesday, and the show will be live every week. Quote, the production is being covered, which shocked me, and that value is somewhere between 20 and 30 million right there. And then the split of the ad rights, which is apparently is a very complicated formula that I don't really know all of. But if they do well with ad sales, they'll make a lot more than if they do poorly with ad sales, of course.
There's a lot of math involved with that, but it basically just comes down to is like the better that the show is doing Nielsen ratings wise and via whatever streaming platform, the company will put itself in a much, much better place because I mean, it's a lot of weird stuff. I can say that the production being covered is a little interesting but that's kind of a standard deal because all really Warner Media is that for at least AEW is a production company.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're, writing the scripts or anything. They're just covering like travel costs and the road crew, shit like that.
Yeah. Dave continues, some of that depends on how well they can convince sponsors that this wrestling will be good to sponsor. There's a lot of factors in that. A lot of it depends on ratings in the long run. There's a guarantee in there, so it's not like there's no money. There's guaranteed money in the deal, but I mean, as far as the whole package is, it's a really good package. I mean, it's a lot better than I thought it would be, but I can't give value to it because I don't know what the ad revenue split is, and it varies based on how much revenue comes in. I've never heard of a wrestling company getting their production paid for. I mean, WWE to this day doesn't get their production paid for. They don't need to because they make a lot more, but when they were on USA, a lot of times the amount of money that they got on USA probably barely covered the production itself. Dave says, I'm talking before they got the big money, which would be the end of 1999, when they got the Spike deal. So probably from the period of Raw 93 to 99, the production probably cost as much as they got because they were only getting $5.5 million a year, and I can't imagine that they produced those shows for less than $100,000 a piece. So that's $5.2 million right there. He continues, I mean, now WWE production is probably in the range of $1 million per night, so that's essentially $100 million a year. Out of that, $470 million is the production costs. So this one, you don't have that. That's a really good deal, and the reason it's a really good deal is because they have multiple suitors. End quote. I think you'd be surprised by how much WWE spends on a show, even when they don't change the sets or have pyro or any of that.
Yeah, that's fair, and I understand that. That makes a lot of sense. But the thing of it is like WWE does not make their money off of Raw, and never have, never will. They make their money off of those 12 to 24 pay-per-view events every year, specifically off of fucking WrestleMania.
Right.
So,
and house show business.
Yeah, absolutely, and house show business. So there's really, it's kind of a two-sided factor in this. The thing with the end with AEW having multiple suitors in the deal is like, because they know that they don't have to deal with a goddamn crazy person to do the deal. And not only do they have to deal with a crazy person, but a crazy person who is like trying to backdoor a fucking football league into the deal.
This next story comes to us from Anthony Nash at WrestleZone.com. AEW president and CEO Tony Khan recently joined SiriusXM's Busted Open Radio to discuss the future of All Elite Wrestling and what fans can expect when it comes to future shows. According to Khan, the aim of AEW will be to provide fans with a serious sports-based product that will take place both, quote, in and around the ring, end quote. According to Khan, however, his main aspect is going to be the matches themselves and not anything else. Quote, we're going to provide a serious sports-based product with the best wrestling. It's going to take place in and around the ring with the best bell-to-bell, along the lines of what you saw at the last show, end quote. Discussing AEW's plans further, Khan discussed how their plans will be different from other brands, especially when it comes to segments that might take place during a show. Quote, to be straightforward about something you're going to notice more and more in our shows is they're going to take place in and around the ring. Like, we're not going to go out of the arena, he said. We're not going to spend half the show backstage in dressing rooms or backstage in choreographed segments. I'm really interested in focusing on the matches, and there's plenty of time outside of the matches to focus on storyline advancement. End quote. Finally, Khan talked about the comedy wrestling segments can certainly be discussed, but that there has to be a proper place for it. Quote, to focus on funny sketches, we can do all that. Nobody does the comedy better than our guys. There's nothing funnier in wrestling than BTE, but there's a time and a place for it. From the sounds of it, Khan and those behind AEW have everything planned, and all that's left to decide is how well it's executed. I wanted to put this article in because it sounds like they're saying that
essentially saying the YouTube content will be sticking around.
Right, that the YouTube content will be sticking around, that the television show will, when we say sports-based product, they're saying legitimately, like, the TV show will be like, here's the matches that's happening tonight, like a football game or whatever, right? And then that the YouTube content will kind of be where they do more of the story advancement stuff.
Right. I think you'll have segments like with the title revealing where you had promos and a couple things there building to some stuff. But for the most part, you're going to be doing, match, maybe a story thing. But for the most part, we're taking the story out of this because this is sports. So I'm a little hesitant on that. You do need to... You can't just have straight wrestling matches for 2 hours. You got to break it up a little bit. But if they're keeping, the YouTube content around to continue our storyline progression, that's fine with me. You may run into a little bit of fatigue there because, that's asking people to now watch 3 hours instead of 2 hours. But I think it should be fine. I don't really see much of an issue with it. I kind of have more of a concern to the guys being tired because they're doing the wrestling show, they're doing their executive roles, and they also have to continue doing BTE, which can be time consuming and draining when you're doing a weekly show.
Sure.
But
I think that from a directorial standpoint, BTE is going to be taken out of their hands to the extent that they want it to be. You know what I mean?
It's very possible.
I mean, they hired Cutler to work on BTE basically. So
there's all of the upside or counterpoint to that is we're just doing weekly TV shows, and they've said they're doing 3 or 4 tentpole pay-per-views. There's not a pay-per-view every month, so there's not always that need to continue building up every 3 weeks to this big show. They can do long form with this because if a pay-per-view is quarterly, every 3 months, you have 3 months of TV and BTE and Road to build up your gimmicks and stuff, so that takes a little bit of the pressure out of that.
Well, that and they have the statistics to lean on, right? So the whole idea behind doing a promos is to give people reason to fight each other. If they get into wins and loss records, as Tony has said in the past, wins and loss records will be a big reason why somebody is even considered for contention for a title, right? If you're that in on the analytics and the stats and things like that, you don't need to explain why these two people are fighting each other. They're fighting each other because they need to move up in the ranks to get the title, right? Which is how a sport would operate. You can do that on the show and then go on the YouTube channel and do feud stuff, right? I don't like him because of this. I don't like him because of this. Do it in that faux documentary style. And then if you have something that's really good that you want to use to put more heat on a match, cut it up and put it in a short package before the match. You know what I mean? And then that, I think that's a really smart and good multimedia way to look for it, because then if people want to be fully invested in the product, they have to be watching your YouTube channel. Then your YouTube channel shoots up the fucking ranks, right? So
which begets more and more revenue. So it's a cycle thing, as one
and more
aspect
more
is
people
building.
seeing it.
Yeah. Another thing that you can look at this as is, we're not going to be doing a thing in the ring, a match, and then you're going to cut to the backstage, so all your crowd is now looking at the Jumbotron. It very much sounds like all of the promos and stuff will be in the ring with people actively reacting to them.
Right, if they even do that.
Yeah.
But yes, which is nice. I think they should stick to that. I think the idea of bringing it out into the world with the grocery store fight, right, and stuff like that, like that's all well and good, but that it does seem of a bygone era, especially if you're trying to presented as a sports product. I think this plan is really smart, really forward-thinking, and something that WWE won't follow them on. And it's a bit of a gamble to be like, oh, people are going to follow us from YouTube to television to YouTube or whatever, right? But I think all you can do is expect your fan base to get invested. And then if they don't, that's fine. But it's better to provide for them a deeper rabbit hole rather than a shallow one that they're going to get bored with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the more things that your consumer the content is there of they don't have to watch this, but they can, and if they want to, there's a deep well of material to keep them interested, is always going to be a better situation.
Right, that's just lore, right?
Yeah.
People love it. As long as it's good, people are going to come to it, right?
Exactly.
If it fucking sucks, then they're going to move on.
And that's going to be the key thing, is like, as long as it's good. And with how these guys have done everything so far, I don't really see much of an issue on that aspect.
Speaking of, let's move into The Road to Double or Nothing, number 17, Epilogue. The final episode of The Road to Double or Nothing starts with Cody and the Bucks sitting in the stands of an empty MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. They do a funny version of the attendance record bit, and Nick says, I feel like something's missing. That's when Kenny Omega comes to sit with his fellow elite. I feel like this scene is in reference to something I've seen before on BTE or something like that, but I couldn't specifically find where it was from.
Probably, and it's probably like a year or two old segment as well, so it's, it's fine.
I tried. I looked through all of the All Us documentary, and I scrubbed footage to try to find what they were referencing, but I feel like I have seen it before, and I'm sure somebody on Discord or something will be like, oh, it's from this fucking thing. We then hear one of them, I think it was Nick, say, oh shit, here we go again, and we move to the title card, which it's funny. Over some gorgeous helicopter footage and a setup montage, the Perfect 10, Sean Spears admits that while he always believed that what AEW was doing would be big, he hadn't really fully understood the scale until he saw the setup within the MGM Grand. He then goes on to say that he wasn't sure anyone would care when he came through the curtain, but his fears were quickly dashed by the roar of the crowd.
I feel like a lot of the guys kind of had that, especially in the Battle Royale, kind of had a little bit of that worry.
I feel like the world had that worry.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's true. But I mean,
you can make all these promises, but
you gotta,
like we said, it had better be good,
right?
You know what I mean? So, but I do feel like a lot of them felt that way. But I feel like the atmosphere in that room was probably unreal. Next, we cut to Brandy introducing Awesome Kong. Kong says that the whir of the crowd shook the room so hard that she worried for her footing on the ramp, which maybe is true, but I find it hard to believe. There were no words. She says, quote, there were no words. I had to shove the personal side of me away because that chick cries at everything, and my Kong personality had to take the wheel. Next, we hear and see snippets of Brett's speech intercut with some beautifully lit shots of the AEW World Championship on a turntable. And man, again,
which is also
gorgeous
great
title.
that Cody was on Twitter this week. He's like, yeah, we fucked up. I'm sorry. At least one of the EVPs will actually take some good pictures of the title.
Then Mr. Ass comes on with the deeply insightful line, AEW is AEW. Thank you, Mr. Ass.
Yeah, you can't really expect real deep thoughts from him.
He then goes on to say that AEW will use its talent to bring you a product that you will enjoy. Again, thank you, Mr. Ass.
Yes, you got to move past it.
We then thankfully go back to Awesome Kong, who says, there's something starting right now. It's in the air. People feel it. Backstage, on stage, in the stands, in the seats, in the lines, in the crowds, in the bars, at home. Something's starting. It's a revolution, and I'm on board. Great to have Awesome Kong on board.
Definitely.
I hope she continues to be. She hasn't got. I never saw her get a graphic.
She
but
has
I hope that she's-
an AEW T-shirt that popped up on Twitter, but I haven't
okay.
seen the graphic either that she is All Elite. Something I did want to talk about is like, it's just funny to make fun of Billy Gunn, but it's very comforting to know he's going to be one of their head coaches because he is a very, very talented individual for wrestling.
I fucking love Mr. Ass. I
Yeah.
don't want people to think I don't love Mr. Ass, but
And
he's just he says everything with this big smile on his face, and it seems like he thinks he's really articulate, and
Yeah.
what he ends up saying is just like it's gonna be great. And hey, if that's what you got, then that's what you got. you know?
It's I mean really a lot of the same mentality of all of his old DX promos, and like, man, you're really trying hard, buddy. We know you are. But just him being a coach for a lot of these guys is a wonderful resource because he has so much experience in the industry, doing the freeform promos as well as just technique. And I think it's a really big get for AEW, as well as Awesome Kong. That's a great get for the women's division.
Next, Kenny tells us that Joshi Wrestling reinvigorated his love for pro wrestling at a time when he was at his lowest. So, when given the opportunity to do anything he wanted with AEW, he immediately saw it as his duty to cast a light on these women and their incredible talents, to show the world what makes these girls special. Kenny says that he's thankful that the Double or Nothing crowd was so welcoming to the Joshi, and goes on to state that AEW will feature more international talents and styles in the future. He promises that we will see the Joshi stars again. We then see a funny clip of Chris Jericho and Iron Mike Tyson and others laughing at Michael Nakazawa's in-ring antics. Which, again, Chris Jericho and Mike Tyson just giggling at Michael Nakazawa slipping out of a hold from Sunny Days.
That was great,
with his
dude.
Baby oil.
I really loved that Mike was a part of Double or Nothing backstage and just, hanging out with everybody.
Just hanging out.
There's a lot of cool pictures on Instagram and Twitter of just all the people meeting him and just like so in awe of him because he was a really big part of a lot of our childhoods.
Well, yeah, especially, I mean, this whole thing, there's so much of this is about, remember when wrestling was great? And he was a part of that, dude.
He really was. And so just seeing him around and just hanging out with fucking Chris Jericho laughing like a kid is amazing to me.
Next, Dave Meltzer and DDP hype the Cody Dustin match before we get a word from a freshly bandaged Dustin Rhodes. Dustin says that the feeling was electric from the moment that he entered the Grand Garden Arena. He had no idea how the AEW crowd would respond to him, but he feels that he could not have asked for a better response. Likewise, he feels that the match is his greatest legacy.
I feel him on that. I was kind of shaky on the reaction he would get as well. I really thought he would get booed because there were so many people, talking like, yeah, this whole match with Cody is such a waste. He's going to drag it down. It's going to be terrible.
Well, it's Cody's home turf too.
Yeah, But still, I mean, he got a welcoming reaction because people they wanted to see this match.
Right, man. And the people that are here, despite that one guy who got banned for being a fucking asshole this week,
for life.
Right, good.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out. Are pro wrestling fans, right? And have a respect for what these guys do. So I didn't think he was going to get booed. I thought it was going to go well for him. And in fact, eventually they fucking booed Cody because they cared about Dustin, right? So, but as far as it being his greatest legacy, yeah, I don't know that if someone was like, show me a Goldust match, like, that would be the one that I would show.
Like before this, and it'd be like, no, thank you.
Or maybe, something from when he was working with his dad. But
it'd have to be like real deep in the Attitude Era. Like real deep.
DDP says that Double or Nothing match with Dustin was proof positive that Cody can be a top of the card star. Cody's first 5-star match, I believe, from Meltzer. Not that that metric really means anything. It's one man's opinion, but it is interesting that he's the only. It's the only match on the card that got that. Although I feel like some of those other matches probably would have done better if this match wasn't such a bigger thing. But then when you rate on a scale like that, it's hard. Cut to a crowd cam of Cody's post-match speech, and fuck, it almost got me again, man. I almost started crying again. Now there's a bunch of gorgeous slow-mo footage, which initially aired completely silent. Someone
tweeted Cody, and he was like, technical difficulties.
Yeah, whatever reasons, Sonny or whoever was responsible must have muted the track before they did the render, and then they put it up without checking it, and it happens.
I haven't watched it since with the new music under it, but I will say when I watched it initially, the silence actually made it seem really cool. Because
it was awkward as fuck for me, dude. I couldn't handle it.
That's fine, but I mean, with the slow-mo and everything, it really kind of, it made the action that you're watching more intense to see, like,
sure, that
way. I probably should watch it with the new music, and it probably sounds really, really good, but I really enjoyed the silent version because it was really cool to me.
Yeah, it was re-uploaded with some nice orchestral scoring underneath. I want to see more of this shit. Like slow-mo and drones and wild camera angles and shit like that. Double or Nothing had a little bit of that. I'd really like to see them push it further. I understand they were in a lot of ways trying to present a product that felt like what you were familiar with if you were a wrestling fan, right? To kind of get people in the door. But in the future, I would they did have that big sweeping crane, which was really cool, that they used a couple of times for some nice shots. But I'd like to see them get really creative with the camera work.
Yeah, I would as well. And I think that's really just something that they're going to have to just tinker around with and figure it out.
Slowly.
Yeah.
Do it slowly.
And they probably tried to avoid as much of that for Double or Nothing as possible because, like, we can't fuck up this show. This has to be perfect.
Yeah, also just like pull it off before you get fancy.
Fyter Fest, Fight for the Fallen, which are essentially going to be considered house shows.
Right.
Run wild, boys. Try shit. It's fine.
They're not really house shows. I mean, they are televised.
Sure.
Or rather on pay-per-view.
They have talked about it. Like, these are kind of just one-offs until we get the TV stuff going.
Right. Now we see the great shots of a camera as it follows Mox to ringside. Finally, we see it, which is such a hero moment. People just gradually freaking out as he passes by them. Intercut with the orchestra and Moxley's Paradigm promo. Beautiful intercut edit of Moxley's Double or Nothing stare up at the lights with his spectacular promo intercut with it. Just a lot of really good editing here. Really made him look like a fucking star, which he is. We then see the bit with him and Janela once again to close the show. And the last thing we see is a graphic that says The Road to Fyter Fest. Which is awesome. That means they're going to continue this thing. It is a little unfortunate that The Road to Fight for the Fallen is going to have like 2 episodes or what or whatever, right?
So what I'm down for this. I hope that they continue the Road series because this is one of the best things I've seen as part of wrestling in a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I'm kind of expecting the Road to Fyter Fest to kind of be the road to both because they have to build these two up simultaneously. That's the only way it's going to work out. Now, after those 2 events, they're going to have a good chunk of time where they can just build straight to All Out, which is probably better for them in the long run. But yeah, they're going to have to build both of these events simultaneously. Otherwise, you're just going to have one episode in between the events because of just how the timing is going to work out.
As we were talking earlier about this kind of content being used to push stories forward, when we said that it looks like the YouTube stuff is going to stick around, I don't necessarily think that BTE is going to be the one to stick around.
I think BTE will be much more sporadic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the road to event or the road of AEW, that's what's going to definitely
or with a title change or whatever.
Yeah.
I think something in this style
this is what's going to this is what's going to stick around. Now, the Bucks may keep doing BTE if they can handle
Sure.
it, but it's
Sure.
going to be less impactful to AEW.
because I think if you're doing this sort of mockumentary, or I mean, in some ways documentary, but documentary in kayfabe style, to sort of push your stories forward, and then you're doing the matches on TV with this high production value that they've had for this series.
This is what you need to do.
I think it'll be excellent.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot smarter than doing your matches on TV sports style and then having this, admittedly, due to the production values, very difficult to love YouTube product, because the sound is not good, the cameras are not good, and that's not everything, but it fucking matters.
Yeah, now if they overhaul BTE and everything is on the same quality scale, that's a different story entirely.
Sure, but then the question is that even that show anymore?
Right. That's kind of the thing with that show, is it is very much just that it's these 5 guys with some iPhones and they're recording their life and having fun, whereas the road to Double or Nothing is it's the documentary stuff. It's really deep and meaningful and very high produced. So it's really important to do it this way. We were talking when we first started doing this show that, like, man, I really hope that they keep doing this after Double or Nothing, because this show is really awesome. And it was really good news at the end of that episode to see that, we're going to keep going with this. So I'm sure that they've seen how loved that this show has become.
Yeah, man, it's great, and I hope that they continue with it, and I'm looking forward to, at least for the time being, till they run these pay-per-views, them sort of figuring out the rhythm with this. And if that is the plan, to sort of keep TV as sort of like a quote-unquote free, although I'm going to have to pay for it in some way, pay-per-view on the television every week, and then we still have this sort of supplementary content to push the stories forward. That's sort of a new idea, but I don't think it's an idea that the generation they're targeting, our generation, will have a very difficult time grasping. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
you
not
may
at
even
all.
find that people find it on YouTube because it's been jacked up on YouTube, right? And that's what gets them into the television show, right? So
I mean, you can honestly get to the point where this content is a second TV show. Like, you do 30 minutes a week with commercials
yeah.
on, like, Friday night, and that's how they push it out, because they could do that. I mean, they probably won't, but they could.
Yeah, you could. I don't know if it's a wise idea, because I think the attraction is that it's not a TV show, is that it's on YouTube. Everybody can access YouTube. You know what I mean? If you want to learn about these characters, that's where you can go to get it. So, and maybe it gets syndicated, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it could be syndicated, but I think you're still always going to have the first hits on YouTube, and then they put it on TV for people that are just not YouTube people, which is fine. That's
Sure.
fair.
Sure.
Or on BR Live, whatever platform they want to use.
But wow, man, a big week for AEW, a huge week for us. Again, Jonathan and I really
So thankful.
Are so thankful to everybody for tuning in. We hope that you've stuck with us for another great week. We're going to be here delivering this content for as long as we can. We're just loving producing this show for everybody, and it's really it's wild, man. And hopefully we can see that community continue to grow. We can be friends with all of you watching AEW, and that'll be a truly wonderful experience for all of us. But really, just a crazy week for us to have all of this sudden attention from everybody,
Right? Yeah.
And so we're going to use this momentum to try to make the show as good as we possibly can for all of you, and we have some exciting plans in the future to make that happen. So stick with us, and we'll continue to be great friends who get together every week and talk about AEW. I didn't write any of this down, which is why I'm sort of stumbling. YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, podcast services everywhere. Subscribe, review, give us 5 stars, just like Meltzer. Jonathan, how's that make us feel?
Too sweet, buddy.
Too sweet. Oh, man. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Seeing the Elite. Find us on Twitter @Seeing the Elite. Again, no G. Pay attention. No G. Seeing the Elite. But more importantly, come and find us in our Discord server. Join with all of our awesome friends in our Discord community and talk about really anything you like, although there's a lot of AEW talk lately because, man, we just had an awesome pay-per-view just recently.
Yeah, we had a real good discussion about E3 last night. It was a lot of fun.
tinyurl.com/Seeing the Elite. That's tinyurl.com/Seeing the Elite. Jonathan, do you have anything more for these people before we go?
I do not. Just, thank you for sticking around with us, and we hope to see you next week.
Yeah, I felt so bad because we got all those new listeners last week, and the audio was all fucked up, right? So hopefully some of them come back.
Yeah, not only was the audio bad, it was also a 3-hour fucking show.
Oh, hey, man, that seemed to be attractive to people. I don't know. Maybe
Looks
next
like it,
time
yeah.
we should do 5 hours.
No, let's not do that.
It seems the longer the podcast is, the more people we get.
Let's not follow that train, because then we're just not sleeping.
I don't sleep so good anymore anyway. Thank you all for Jonathan and I. And as always, go out there and change the world.